The 2025 F1 season has arguably been the most boring, exciting season ever. We got our first three-way title fight since 2010, and two of the drivers are trying their hardest to bottle it. But that's getting ahead of ourselves because it all started in a land down under. First of all, the Australian GP is a far better season opener than Bahrain. That is not an opinion, that is a fact. Especially when you have a wet race, and most of the rookies decide they don't actually want to make their F1 debut and smash their cars in the wall. Also, as much as this is a crusty and overused joke, that included rookie Fernando Alonso. Otherwise, it was a strong start of the season for Lando, and Oscar practiced the reversing skills he learned at Clarkson's farm.
Behind me in that tractor, we'll see if you can see it, that is Oscar. How long has he been doing it? 40 minutes?
About 40 minutes now. I thought you said he was a driver.
Of course, the last icon in this race was the Ferrari pit wall, with their incredible race engineers coming out with the banger that was,
I have the seat full of water. Like full of water.
Must be the water.
I cannot wait for that meme to be painfully unfunny and overused next year. But let's move on to the first and basically only bit of Ferrari's success this year, the China Sprint. I genuinely believe this was the last time Lewis Hamilton smiled, because after that, his dog died, and he began driving like prime Luca Badoa. More on that later though, as Lewis took a dominant sprint victory in China, getting all of us Ferrari fans excited for a good weekend. Just for Piastri to take a dominant victory and both Ferraris to be disqualified, highlighting one of many huge issues this car would have this year, that being the ride height. When ran at a height that actually allowed the team to be fast, the Ferrari would constantly scrape the plank on the bottom, wearing it down to a level below what the regulations allow, and therefore risking a disqualification. So basically, we went really slowly for the rest of the year. Next race would also highlight some big issues in not just the Ferrari, but all the F1 cars. The Japanese Grand Prix has historically held some of the best races in Formula 1. Even recently, it's always been a pretty solid, entertaining race. This year, it was probably the most boring Grand Prix of the season. Yeah, Verstappen took an impressive pole lap, but the race was just one big train of all the cars following each other and nothing else happening. Aside from Lando Norris mowing the lawn at one point, and Yuki's Red Bull debut showing us all we should have just kept Checo Perez. In the words of Max Verstappen, we, and I mean all of us, love CP. What made the Japanese Grand Prix even worse was that if you watched Sky Sports broadcast, Jacques Villeneuve was commentating. So not only was nothing happening, I also wanted to rip my ears off my head. And this highlighted just how bad the 2025 cars are at overtaking. The dirty air and the fact they're humongously fat, both playing big roles in this.
Boring.
Bahrain wasn't much better. I mean, sure, there were more overtakes, but in the end, it just led to Oscar increasing his championship lead and Pierre Gasly somehow dragging the Alpine into the points. By Saudi Arabia, people were beginning to doubt Lando Norris's championship chances, and he only solidified this by smashing his car in the wall. Also, us Ferrari fans were finally allowed to skip a week of therapy when Charles Leclerc got on the podium, which was good news. Otherwise, another fairly forgettable race, as there were many this season, due to the lack of on-track action. Thankfully, Miami was slightly better as we had a wet sprint race. So of course, Ferrari and Leclerc had to do their classic, but for the Italians, there was some good news. Kimi Antonelli took sprint pole, making everyone wonder if we're in for his first win of any kind in Formula 1. Sadly, it looked like he'd studied Lando Norris when it came to race starts, and he went off the track losing positions. It was after this race I decided that Liam's slow zone was my enemy, as he took Fernando Alonso out when he was finally in a good position. Just a quick side note, but this is by far being the most unlucky season for Fernando Alonso ever. Multiple times his engine just gave up. By far the most painful was when he was in 6th at Monaco, or he had strategy go the wrong way, or when I went to the Italian Grand Prix, his suspension broke, and then there's also just Liam's slow zone. Speaking of Liam, well, his replacement, Tsunoda decided that that in the next Grand Prix in Imola, things weren't exciting enough and he wanted to slam himself in the wall in qualifying. Whilst he was doing that, Max Verstappen showed why he should never be written off and clowned on the McLarens with what was possibly the best move of the season into turn 1. Then after an actually quite exciting Imola Grand Prix, Monaco was very boring. The attempt at the 2-stop failed miserably. However, I do appreciate the FIA actually trying something to make Monaco more interesting. The solution is very simple though. Just take the Bernie Ecclestone idea of adding sprinklers to the track or make them all race it in go-karts. Lando did win it though, so the championship closed in slightly. The Spanish Grand Prix was then a relatively normal race until Max Verstappen had the crash out of the century. Undoubtedly, he purposely drove into George Russell after being instructed to give the position back and then received a penalty which dropped him from 5th all the way down to 10th, which may prove invaluable in the championship when push comes to shove. The Canada was for some reason the one race where everything happened. George Russell took his first win of the year, Kimi Antonelli took his first ever podium, Lando Norris did a 2011 Jenson Button and drove into the back of his McLaren teammate, only instead of taking his teammate out and driving on to an incredible win, he crashed himself out right at the end and forked over easy points to Oscar Piastri. I mean, what do you do when he's even bottling? This was a clear low point for Lando Norris. So it was good that he bounced back with a win in Austria. But all I actually remember about Austria is Fernando Alonso and Gabriel Bortoleto outclassing the rest of the grid with some crazy wheel-to-wheel action.
Gabriel Martinelli راح زاد السرعة Gabriel يا Gabriel يا Gabriel.
Which makes me again go, please, please, please give El Nano a good car for 2026. All I want is to end my 26 season review with Fernando Alonso is world champion. Firstly though, God save the bloody king, because it's time for the British Grand Prix. And in classic British fashion, the weather was temperamental, and let's keep with the British theme and introduce this race like a Top Gear segment. Tonight, Hamilton remembers how to drive. Verstappen forgets how to drive. And Oscar Piastri pisses off the FIA, gets himself a penalty, and gives the win to Lando Norris. But despite all of those bombshells, by far the biggest bombshell was Nico Hülkenberg on the podium. And best of all, in the green tractor that is the Sauber. Definitely one of my highlights of the season. And next up was my favorite track of the year too, Spa-Francorchamps, which sadly again ended up being a pretty rubbish race. Is it the track's fault? Well, let's have a look through history. If 20 years ago we had Schumacher and Hakkinen pulling off crazy moves, and now nothing happens after about lap 4, it's definitely not the track's fault. In fact, you should watch this video at some point on why it's the car's fault. In Hungary, however, the best thing that happened was Charles Leclerc getting rage baited by not only Ferrari, but George Russell as well. Now, I'm a Ferrari fan, but I think I'm in the acceptance stage of the grieving process because I can see the funny side to this. Leclerc took pole, finally giving us some hopium. Then he led a large portion of the race, only for Ferrari to ask him to lift and coast because his brakes would blow up if he actually wanted to apply them. See Singapore 2025. Then Russell successfully rage baited Leclerc into giving himself a penalty and ending up in 4th place off the podium. Absolute depression once again. With that, it was finally the summer break. And although in terms of drivers, not much happened. I know the 4 Jack Doohan fans have already commented I forgot his swap with Colapinto. I didn't. It just wasn't that interesting to see a driver who scored no points and crashed a couple times be replaced by another driver who scored no points and crashed a couple times but had more money. Goodbye, every single viewer from Argentina. Speaking of viewers though, I am going to yap a little bit about the channel very quickly before we delve back into the F1 season, a very exciting second half of the season. This has been my first year going full-time on YouTube, and I mean, it's been a hell of a lot of fun. I really would like to thank all of you who've sat and watched my videos and put up with my terrible jokes, and the over 105,000 people that have subscribed over 2025. That's crazy. You may have noticed every video I do try and step something up, trying to just improve as we go along. Hopefully that'll continue into next year and there'll be some bigger and better things on the way. So thank you very much for all your support this year. It really does mean a lot. But let's hop back into F1 with an actually fire race, the Dutch Grand Prix. It is criminal they are saying this won't be on the calendar after 2026, when almost every year is a banger, with some actual overtakes. Lando Norris's car also blew up, and Kimi Antonelli made enemies with his home country. Lando's car blowing up especially was consequential because a lot of people were writing him out of the championship at this point. Little did they know what was to come. With the first hurdle in Oscar Piastri's way being the Italian Grand Prix, where I actually was sat in the grandstands along the main straight. I did document all of my journey, even played real-life F1 bingo. It was a lot of fun. But all I can say is that when Oscar was made to let Norris past, the entire circuit booed. They then also booed Norris on the podium and sang toot 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 Max Verstappen for Max. Do you know how hard it is to get the Tifosi to cheer for you when you are not a Ferrari driver and none of the other Ferrari drivers are even on the podium? Things would then only go from bad to worse for Oscar in Baku, where the effects of working for the bottle factory finally rubbed off on him and he slammed his car into the wall multiple times. Meanwhile, I was watching that race feeling like a massive idiot. Because at the start of the year, everyone was talking about how they had Carlos Sainz getting a podium on their bingo card. Now, I think Sainz is a great driver, and I do think Williams is on the up and coming. Maybe even championship contenders for 2026. I never thought in 2025, after Logan Sargent blew half the budget the year before on crashing the car, we would have not one, but two Sainz-Williams podiums. I hold my hands up in apology. Singapore then looked like it could have been redemption day for Oscar Piastri, but at the race start, Lando ignored British queuing culture and barged his way past his teammate and into third, with Russell leading the race and crucially Max in second, ahead of the McLarens. It was at this point where people realized Max Verstappen, in the past 3 races, had gained significant points on both McLaren drivers, and he was all but back in the title fight. The bottle factory would need to watch out, especially in the USA, as Max won again another race. Meanwhile, his teammate, poor Yuki Tsunoda, was forced to watch Ollie Behrman do ballet. I do hope Yuki can find peace and open a restaurant now he's not in F1. They did my man dirty. With the USA being another underwhelming race for Oscar Piastri, in Mexico, the lead of the championship finally swapped over to Lando Norris.
Simply lovely, huh?
A big win for him, and I do just want to add, after the summer break, Norris was on X Games mode. He must have started drinking his own monster because he was no longer bottling, he was flying. Despite Lando's incredible form, Brazil showed us why you never write off Max Emilian Sid the Sloth Verstappen. Despite starting from the pit lane after a terrible qualifying, Verstappen drove like the AI was on 0% and ended up in 3rd place. All video long I've been moaning about how no one can overtake. I should change that to no one but Max Verstappen can overtake, because this whole season he's been on another level. Piastri got hit in the face by Mohammed Ben Salem's stupid rules during the race and fell even further back because in the sprint he smashed his car in the wall too. Ah well, there's always next round. So we arrive in Las Vegas, the city of gambling. If you were a gambling man at this point, you'd still bet on one of the McLaren drivers winning the title. Something would have to go really wrong to change that. Something like a double disqualification. McLaren took a risk running the car low, and also conveniently the week before, the FIA had banned a method the teams were using to reduce plank wear, meaning McLaren ran that car too low, scraped off the plank and got disqualified. And Max, with the win in Vegas, was well and truly back in the title fight. F1, being particularly stupid, not only has the Qatar Grand Prix on the calendar, but has it as the penultimate round of the season.
This guy stinks!
So at this very uninteresting track, McLaren really had to do well. They decided they'd copy someone's homework. Unfortunately, they copied 2022 Ferrari's homework because they were the only team who didn't pit under the most perfect safety car. One of the golden rules of Formula 1 is pitting under a safety car saves you a bunch of time, especially when that safety car comes out on the exact right lap in a race that has mandatory laps you have to pit on. So with the complete fumble, by the end of the race, there was 16 points separating the top 3. Lando in first, Max in second, Oscar in third. Like I said, that's not happened since 2010, but don't remind evil cardboard Fernando of that. He gets very sad. And as of recording, I've not watched the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, so I'm gonna go see how this whole thing ends. Is this the
World champion hotline.
Lando Norris is the world champion. A very tense Abu Dhabi race. Maybe not the most exciting ever, but then it is Abu Dhabi. Obviously, I've seen the online discourse. Does Lando Norris deserve the world championship? Well, yes. I'm not going to kid myself and say he's the best world champion we've ever had, or he's going to be remembered as Schumacher or Hamilton are. But we've had plenty of champions on the same level, if not worse. And overall, Norris did a pretty good job. I know I've made a lot of bottle jokes this year, but that second half of the season from Lando and the first half from Oscar was truly impressive from both of them, and they've done a good job. With that said, I think when people remember the 2025 Formula One season, it will be remembered more for Max Verstappen's excellence, his mere 2 points off Lando Norris by the last round of the season, and his incredible over 100-point deficit he overcame. But as Lando said himself, rank me wherever you want, I don't care. And he shouldn't, because he is now a world champion. What a great season to watch, despite maybe the cars not being the best, and I genuinely believe 2026 will be Fernando Alonso's year. But stay tuned throughout the winter break and into the 2026 season, because I got crazy stuff planned, hopefully a lot more funny videos coming out, so keep those notifications on. And a big thanks to my channel members who've been supporting me for months and months now. I really do appreciate you guys. It goes a long way to support the channel. You can become one from just 99p a month and you get access to exclusive content. Have a lovely rest of your day and goodbye.